We're live.
Welcome back to Insight Club. Today we're talking about living in the shadow of the rigidity of assumptions. Stay tuned. The first rule of Insight Club is you don't talk about Insight Club. You do Insight Club. The second rule of Insight Club is the only assumptions we make about one another are that we all want happiness and we all want to avoid suffering. The third rule of Insight Club is you check all your other assumptions at the door. We hope these conversations will bring you insights that incite you to action. Welcome to Insight Club.
You ask yourself, where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
So where is your mind, Megan?
Well, what caught my attention this time was insights that incite you to action. And I was like, I've been doing a lot of insight collection and not a lot of action. And I've been feeling a pull toward more action. It's been feeling really satisfying this summer to spend time in my garden, making things. Oh my gosh, I just picked some zucchini off the vine and they're like, the camera's not big enough so for me to show you. I mean, they're seriously, one is 2 feet long. They're just massive because our zucchini plant got so big, then the leaves are so big that you miss them. They hide, and then by the time I find them, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is massive. So I'm looking up recipes. I made a really delicious one last night. I'm like, zucchini recipes, give me all your zucchini recipes. But all that to say, I notice such a different feeling when I'm in action. And of course, I love collecting insights and I love having the moments of clarity and helping other people have those moments of clarity. And there's a tug on me right now. So what I was really latching onto is insights that incite me to action. I'm like, I'm ready for doing more things, whether that's getting in the dirt with my hands, or I don't know. It could look like a lot of things, but I'm full. I'm almost like no more insights until I can process them, until I can make the change. And I'm aware that I'm very good at the self-awareness part. And then I'm like an A+ student when it comes to having the moments of self-awareness. I'm like a C student when it comes to putting things into action, maybe even a D student when it comes to putting things into action. So that's what was for me today in our opening. What was for you? Where is your mind?
I probably can do my homework more as well. I feel like the insights have been coming, for me to take action without me realizing in life, and probably it's happening for you too, because we were talking here about the awareness of when something happens or something triggers or some of our assumptions as well come up, and how it can become rigid in those assumptions as well. And I was thinking there's steps into it, right? There's that point of we have no awareness of our assumptions and we just react and we think we're right about it and that's the only way and that's other people are wrong and that's what happens. And then we have a little bit of awareness of our assumptions and we still react and we notice what happens and we can see both sides, and we still have a little bit of a bitter feeling with that. Then we have a little bit more of awareness, and then we might feel a little bit ashamed of our reactions, but we're still not really getting into a full awareness of things. And then there's that point where we actually can notice and laugh at
Yeah. So I'm put in mind of how in our previous conversation, we were talking about being self-resourced, our conversation around regulating the nervous system. And you're saying, with increasing levels of awareness. And I would say, yeah, it's increasing level of awareness. But also, I think there's an element of being self-resourced because if I'm aware of something, but I'm feeling too scared or vulnerable to own my part in it, then that's when I will, we always say if we know better, we do better, but it's not as simple as that. It's like if we know better and we have the awareness and we feel, I don't know if it's safe enough, self resourced enough, if we have the capacity for it, how about that? Then that's when we do better is my feeling. And this I told you I had an insight about, kind of why we're so drawn to assumptions. And as we go through life, assumptions are shortcuts, essentially, a lot of the time, right? Like I'm having this interaction, I assume this, so I can just skip, I don't have to start from the beginning of human history when I'm in the grocery store, right? We make all of these assumptions and they're shortcuts and they allow us to move through things quickly. And I was like, well, okay, that makes sense to just make life more efficient. But it also made me realize that I think we are drawn to assumptions also when we don't have like spaciousness. And that spaciousness can be at an emotional level. So a lot of the assumptions we're making in daily life are just like, oh, this is quick, this is efficient. Okay, great. But we tend to make assumptions as well when it doesn't feel like there's the time or the space, or we don't feel safe enough to really get to know the other person. Let me see if I can make this more coherent. Somebody just shared a story on Facebook about being on a plane and somebody coming up to them and saying, "You're in my seat." And they're like, "No, here's my ticket. I'm, whatever it is, 34C." And the guy's like, "Oh, I'm 33C," and didn't even apologize. Then went to the next row and said to somebody else, "You're in my seat." And that person was like, "Well, no, I'm 33E and you're whatever it was." And so, and the person sharing this was like, "Why do we make this assumption?" I'm like, well, think about it. It would take a feeling, it makes us feel unsafe to make mistakes or to admit to mistakes. So if we are going through life and it doesn't feel safe to say, I might not know, or I might be making a mistake, then we project it out and we make the mistake the other person's, and then we're in power and they're not. And I was like, our whole culture is increasingly geared toward giving us less and less space to expand and feel safe and feel like we can connect. And I was like, so are we seeing an increase in assumptions about other people? Because not only is that an effective shortcut for like getting more stuff done in life, but that's an effective shortcut for like skipping the part of an interaction where I can be open. Is any of this making sense?
Yes. I was thinking, oh yeah, assumptions makes us feel safe. So if you can't make sense of something, you feel and you feel unsafe, you're gonna project that as something that is wrong with the world or with the person you're interacting with, and it feels safer to make to find someone to blame than to realize that your world is not the only vision valid.
Yes. Yes. And I think that increasingly there isn't time, there isn't safety, there isn't space to be in that expansive feeling of, oh, I wonder what's going on. I wonder why we're having this disagreement about whose seat this is. What else could be going on? The faster I can jump to a conclusion, the faster I can decide my position is intact. Whether that's about, which seat is which on the airplane, or, who's the right leader for us to put in charge, whether it's this micro decision or this macro decision. It's like get through the discomfort of not knowing and get to knowing faster.
Yeah. Yeah. And that might be why when you are in your culture, right, it's easier to, because there are a set of rules and assumptions that everyone in that culture agrees on. But when you get out of your natural group and you go on a trip, for example, to a country where the culture is different, or to a different group that has different rules and so on, you might feel uh, challenged. You challenge your worldview, and for some people this is what is like, this expands us, right? You feel like, oh, I get to see different points of view, and for other people that feels very threatening,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
depends on the rigidity.
Yeah. Ooh, I mean, what you said just brought up this as well. As long as I'm in my home context and able to operate on these assumptions, there's nothing asking me to ask why. Why do we do it this way? Is this a good way? But if I switch contexts and people are using different operational instructions, it opens up that question: is the way I've been doing it all along a good way? We've always done it this way. Um, in college, I got into this massive argument with somebody about whether or not you had to peel potatoes before making mashed potatoes. And we were each so convinced we were correct, and it's like there's only one way to do it. And it was based on, you know, logic and the way potatoes are and all this stuff. And then it turned out we each were just making mashed potatoes the way our mothers had made mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
There was no like looking up in a chemistry book, like what's the chemical interaction of the peel with the water, and is that better or worse? It was just, this is how we did it in our families. And when we got to that point, it was humorous, but before that point it was very heated.
I hated conversation about mashed potatoes.
And you know what the icing on the cake in terms of the funniness is? I don't remember which way I was arguing for, whether you had to peel them or not peel them. I don't even remember which one was mine.
Well, I guess, which way do you prefer then?
Well, now I don't peel them because it's more work, and it turns out the skins just get, like you don't feel the skins. So I just skipped that part. But there's a kind of vulnerability, and we were talking about that self-awareness piece, and then that other piece of like capacity or something around, do I have the ability to be open to growth in this moment?
Yes. And we I just wanted to bring this up because we were talking about this as well, because Pluto had gone retrograde and went back to Capricorn, which brings us to look into the shadows of our limits, of our rules, of our control systems, and uh, Pluto is already about control and the shadow, and it's Capricorn. It's also about rules and rigidity and doing things correctly in the shadow. So there's a lot of control in that as well, in the way things have to be and in the rules that we create for ourselves. But also, it is about maturity and the shadow of why we don't want to grow up sometimes, and the shadows that we have with the relationship with our parents, which can bring a lot of these heated things on how we believe the world is, because we were created this way. And we just had an eclipse where the moon and the sun are opposed. So there's this duality of the masculine and feminine against each other here as well, even though there's some good things for us to bring. So we had, with all of that and Pluto connected during this period, a lot of these shadows can come up. Uh, and we were talking about we experiencing some of these things as well. So yeah, just wanted to bring up the
Yeah.
cosmology.
Yeah. And it's so, I mean, it's so helpful for me to remember that. And initially, when we were chatting before we started recording about like, September and Pluto went back into Capricorn, and I was like, I didn't need more challenge. I'm like, I had plenty of challenge. And then as you were talking about that piece of the rigidity and the control and the maturity, even a couple things hit and connected, and I was like, oh yeah, that is, I'm feeling called. um I'm feeling called to challenge. There's a core belief that keeps surfacing for me, that I'm really ready to challenge. And it's interesting because I'll share it with you. I'm calling it the Highlander belief. Have you ever seen the movie Highlander, this 80s movie? Okay. And he's like, there can be only one. And the whole time you're kind of like, why? It seems like there could actually be more than one, except for the one guy who's like, there can be only one. And so every other Highlander, he's like battling to the death. But when you watch the movie, you're kind of like, is that true? Could there be more than one? And my husband and I like joke about this all the time. You're like, there can be only one, as this really ridiculous idea that leads to so much violence and bloodshed. And I've been noticing that coming up. So when I encounter people and they're doing the thing that I want to be doing, I feel this huge sense of disappointment. Right. So it's like, I was gonna write books, but that person is writing books. And it has to do with people who are in my circle. It's not like Elizabeth Gilbert wrote a book and so I can't write a book. It has to do with people I know and care about, and there's some kind of emotional connection. It's like, okay, you're doing that thing, but I was going to do that thing. And then this deflation of, I guess I can't do that thing. And I was just noticing this coming up. And I'm like, I've got Highlander syndrome.
Highlander. That can be only one.
There can be only one. Including, like, I was just spending time with a really wonderful group of women, and one of them has just released a song, and everybody was so excited about the song, and she sang her song, and I was like, oh, I guess I can't write a song, like, I can't share about my song because, this is somebody who has a song, and that's what's being celebrated. So that's when I'm really ready to bring into the fire of Pluto and Capricorn at the end of 2024 and burn it to a crisp. I'm not sure what that will look like. It's going to take some action. I was talking about wanting to take action. So
I'm curious to understand, like, if the song that this person was celebrating, you mean that you couldn't talk about yours because hers was being celebrated?
yeah. So if somebody in my circle, if somebody I know that's what it is being celebrated, or even there was we had an opportunity to have a channel for us. And so one of the things wasn't even like, oh, you've already done this. The channeled message was like, oh, you're going to do this. I was like, oh, I wanted to do that, but now I can't because somebody in my circle that I care about has that as her thing. So it can't be my thing. So it's specifically around, like, I can't step on somebody's toes. If I do that thing, or if I wanted to be known for that thing, or if I wanted to be celebrated for that thing, I'm hurting this person I care about.
Yeah, not that's that fear of our own light as well, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I do understand, like, of course, if you're celebrating someone, you're not gonna be like,
You're not
"Oh, yeah,
going to come to somebody else's birthday party and be like, I also had a birthday 6 months ago. Yeah.
yeah, or my birthday was yesterday, so celebrate me too,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't see why we can't celebrate together. Like, for example, if someone says like, "Oh, I just released a song," and of course you're gonna celebrate them, and you can also share have I released one a while ago. Do you want to hear as well? Maybe we have stuff to talk about it. Like it's a point in common. It shouldn't be like, oh, now I can't talk about this because this other person just had
Yeah.
this. And of course, this is come. I feel like it all depends on how where we come from. Like
Yeah.
if we come from a place of connecting, it's one thing. If we come from a place of one upping the other person, is a different thing.
Sure. Sure.
Like you're
Well,
not
and
in
the talking about it is really not the, that's kind of a minor thing. It's the doing it. So in my mind, that translates to I can't do it. Like doing it or pursuing it would,
the.
you know, would be negative. And of course, there's a huge benefit to that, right? Because it means I don't have to pursue my dreams if somebody else has done something. I'm off the hook, shining my light. You've already done that.
You already done.
Yeah, so that's my big, between now and the end of the year, that's my project. That's
Yeah.
my exploration and action.
I think the question with this is why we do what we want to do.
Why we do what we want to do?
Yeah.
Say more.
Like if we feel like if this person did it, then I can't do it. I would question, why am I doing this? Is this because this is something
Mm,
that I really want to do, or
yeah.
because I want to be the first to do something, or because I want this to be my thing? Because if it's still my thing, it doesn't matter that someone else did it. I'm gonna do it my way.
Yeah. That's a good one to unpack. Where is the desire coming from? And also, yeah, where is the desire coming from? And is it about, because I think I used this language saying like being known for that thing. And that's
Mhm.
different from doing that thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some there's some good stuff to unpack. But that feels like a real maturity piece too. So when you were talking about maturity with Capricorn, I was like, oh, that really resonates because it feels very immature to me to be going through life saying there can be only one.
Yes.
It feels like a very infantile response, like the scarcity mindset that you sometimes see if you see children, under age 3 playing and interacting and socializing and figuring out all those boundaries. And there might be 5 or 10 different toys around, and then there's the one toy and one has it and the other one tries to get it as if there's only there's only one. There could be only one toy. And it's like I see that you're playing with that. And one time I used to babysit for twins, and the girl she like realized her brother would want whatever toy she was playing with, so she would go pick up the toy she didn't actually want to play with and make this show. I mean, she was 1 and change, she's very young and very smart. She would go pick up the toy she didn't want to play with and make this show of like, oh, it's so fun, this toy. He would immediately crawl over, grab it from her, play with it, and then she would go play with the thing she really wanted. I was like, that's a smart. But there is that energy of I see somebody else doing it, so now I have to have it, which I would say is like a desire coming from our shadow as opposed to
Yes.
our essential self. Yeah, it's a good one to unpack.
Yeah. And at the same time, sometimes the things that we see in other people that they're doing, and it gets us to think like, oh, that's actually something that I want to. Sometimes shows us that maybe we were telling ourselves that it couldn't, but seeing someone else doing, you get to see that, oh, actually I probably can. So
Mm.
it's not all that that's why I see, why do I want this? Why, what am I getting from this? Because sometimes, yes, we're gonna see someone doing something, and that just reminds us that we're not doing the thing that we actually wanted to do.
Yeah, yeah, that's the beauty of
But
it.
and our thing might be something else. But sometimes also that points that there's something here that I was negating myself, and that person is showing me that it's possible.
Yeah, yeah. There's going to be some interesting unpacking there for me. Yeah. Are you noticing this energy of the rigidity and the return to the rules and the like familial relations coming up and what's going on for you?
Yeah, actually, for me, it's more like me trying to come back to my own inner rules, my own
Mm.
the things that are important for me, my values, the things that I can't negotiate and that I won't negotiate. And I know that these things can't be rigid, but I come from a place where I always were too fluid with this thing, like always accommodating for others, always trying to fit.
Mm.
And I'm feeling my excess accommodation challenged so that I kind of can finally see, like, oh yeah, here's a from here I won't go backward anymore. So this is a little bit uncomfortable a lot sometimes, but the thing that I'm seeing more is exactly that maturity piece that I mentioned. um, I'm seeing that people don't like limits, and I usually don't deal with that as much because I'm accommodating.
Yeah.
And then I'm starting to see, like, all right, how do I deal with other people's lack of flexibility?
Hmm. So how do you? What are your strategies?
I'm still learning.
Yeah. I'm thinking about these words. Rigidity, I think we generally associate with negativity, even in non-moral judgment ways. Like if a building is rigid, then if a tree can't bend in the wind, then it snaps, right? And I think rigidity also has some connotations of missing the suppleness of life. When something's desiccated, all the moistures come out of it and it's brittle. And, what happens to human beings once our spirit has left, it's like we become rigid. So there's almost a feeling of a lack of opportunity versus a word like strength
Yeah.
or firm, even being firm versus being
Yeah.
rigid.
My inner work with this is like how much resilience is good, and where am I like dimming myself and having to uh, cut parts of myself to accommodate, because
Mm,
that's the point where if something is taking me away from my truth, from my essence, then it's not worth being it's not a value to be resilient in these cases. So I'm questioning myself quite a lot, where can I be more flexible, and where it's a place where it's better for me to step out
mm.
and just let other people have their views and I have mine.
Mm, that makes a lot of sense. I'm thinking about the word accommodate, make space for, but also, accommodations are where you stay. You go on a trip, you need to get accommodations.
Mm,
So it's like to a certain extent, when we're accommodating people, we are giving a home to whatever energy they're bringing. And so then the question becomes like, do we want to make a home for that energy?
yeah.
In the moment, maybe it's like, I don't need to interact with this, and I also don't need to start a conflict around it. There's this middle way where I'm like, oh, I'm just taking myself away from that. But when we make accommodations, we're making homes for things. Do we
Mm,
want to let them take root? Do we want to let certain kinds of energies take root?
I love that. I love that analogy. Actually, it makes a lot of sense. Like, do I want to let people create a home in this? right?
Yeah.
And actually, that comes for me as well as a uh, do am I receiving that accommodation, that home in the same way?
Yeah.
Am I feeling my uh, desires and needs and values are being respected as well? Because I feel like this is a pretty key point. Like, if there's a mutual respect, you can accommodate and like create uh, homes for each other. But if there's demand, if there's it's my way or the highway, and if there's that push
Yeah.
of like I'm not taking any way around and any other option, then it's abuse and not truly uh, making space, right?
I just did a lot of plane travel, and on a couple of the flights, I had middle seats and was just kind of thinking about there's this little dance that goes on with strangers about where everybody's elbows are. And I was just noticing how beautifully it worked. It's not comfortable, but it just, we all had that energy of I want to be comfortable, and I there are other people too, and we just kind of moving our dancing around our elbows. And so I was thinking about that as you just said that, where if one person had been like, I claim this is my my spot, it's like, oh, it's so unpleasant. And so we can navigate situations and still try to, it's not exactly what we would call up. It's not exactly what we would order if we had, I guess that's why you sit in first class. If you really wanted to be your way, that you sit in first class. But it's
Yeah.
like, okay, we can make this work because we all have the energy of, I want to be comfortable. I acknowledge you want to be comfortable. Let's see how we can do that. One of the people I sat next to, even as he was sitting down, was like, I apologize. I have very broad shoulders. And it was so like, what a kind thing to say. And so then as we were doing that dance and trying to get space, that created the context of, wow, you're thoughtful and you are aware of the space you're taking up. He's just like a big muscly guy. And I
Yeah.
thought, what a great energy to bring to the beginning of an interaction with strangers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Acknowledging the your own side of things, right? It's
Yeah.
respectful.
Yeah, it's like, there's nothing I can do about it. This is how it is, and I am aware that this is a thing. So here we go.
Yeah.
Now, if only he would have had that self-awareness about his cologne.
Oh, that's a different thing.
It was so interesting because I was like, oh, he's very thoughtful. And I got nauseous because it just, whatever cologne he was wearing was so strong, so overpowering. I was like, oh my God.
Highly sensitive people suffer from this.
If I were in charge, there would be no sense beyond like essential oils allowed on airplanes, small spaces. But yeah, that sounds like a really gratifying project to be working on. Like, to what extent do I want to tap into my resilience, and to what extent is there a firmer boundary there? And we were talking about this in our episode about don't regulate your emotions.
Yeah.
That there's been like a real unevenness. Maybe it'll all get fixed as we move into Libra season, but we've been in that shadow state of like over accommodating. Like, okay, I'm the one who's aware of this, so I'll be over accommodating, and the person who's not aware, it's like, I put my elbows everywhere. So finding that balance seems like that's a great project.
And that shows how things are, from the insights that we're having in these episodes, are coming for us to take action on, even though we sometimes don't actively seek to take the action. Because we did talk about that. And I actually can't help. I do the work to regulate my nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, most people don't, and I think this should be taught in schools probably,
Yes.
so that we can have more mature conversations instead of reactions.
Yeah. You know, in some schools it is my sister did a whole certification in like bringing mindfulness into classrooms. And she ended up getting her yoga teacher certification because of this to be able to come into. So she works helping schools manage, you know, challenges that are coming up and optimize what's going on in the classroom and support and everything. And she spent a lot of years in the classroom as a teacher as well, in at the preschool level, so with really small kids. And I think that's so cool, just bringing that those tools, whether they're consciously taught or whether they're simply modeled, you know. And I think there's a combination of that, where having somebody who is intentionally self-regulating and bringing that energy and helping bring coherence.
Yeah.
So some kids are taught it, but it's definitely not the norm. It's definitely not the norm. I'm ready for it to be the norm. And you know what I'm ready for? People for, how can I frame this clearly? I might not be able to frame this clearly. For people to stop making woo the outlier, and for us to just acknowledge, all of you people who don't believe in the magic of the universe, you're the weirdos. Can we swap that? Can we shift that paradigm? I'm so tired of being called woo.
True. Well, that's one of the things. Like, it, just because we can't prove something doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
I keep imagining, like, imagine 75% of the population didn't have a sense of smell, had never had a sense of smell, right? And those of us who are like, oh, there's a gas leak, you know, we'd be, oh my God, you're a witch. Or we'd be like, oh, you know, somebody's cooking bacon. And you'd be like, oh, you're a witch.
How do you know that?
Just because you haven't developed the sense, or you're not aware of this sense, it doesn't mean it's not innate to human beings. And the assumption that I think something that's so important for us to remember is that the assumption that the world is only mechanical hasn't always been the assumption that we operated on. That came in at a certain point, and that's, you know, we're operating based on that assumption right now, but it's not the only one we could adopt.
I feel that quite often when I talk about energy, and people who can't sense energy think that, like, oh, that's just bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay.
I have the experience where there are some things, and this just happened recently, where people were using a pendulum, and I was relating to it with skepticism. Like, I didn't use the pendulum myself, and I was relating to it with skepticism because I hadn't experienced it, but not with dogmatism. I was like, I don't know what that feels like, and it's not something that has, do you know what I mean? Like, I haven't ever felt that, and I'm just like, really? Are they really feeling that? But it doesn't make me want to tell them what they're experiencing isn't real.
Yeah.
It just governs me. And I was like, I don't feel like I want to ask a question because I don't have this full acceptance of it. And so then I think I'm probably just good. Then it probably won't work. Then I'll probably just be in my head going, I want the answer to be yes. Right. But what if we could simply, God, I think this was a recorded class of Guru Jagat, and she was like quoting Yogi Bhajan, saying, there are some things when you see people do them, you just kind of politely look away, the way you do if you're at the beach and you see somebody's changing out of their bathing suit. You know, like somebody's holding up the towel and you know they're getting naked. What do? You just look away. You're just like, oh, I'll let you have your moment. And I thought it was such a beautiful way to describe not needing to get into it with somebody if I don't understand what they're doing. Because even as I'm ranting about like, stop calling me woo and this is the norm and everybody else is a weirdo, I've had, like this fraction of experiences related to energetic stuff, and there are people who've had, man, I was at a beauty salon recently and the gal was like, oh yeah, spirits used to follow me home when I was a kid. And my mom she asked about a scent and I said something about Palo Santo and she didn't know what that was. And it's like, you use it to clear it. She said, oh yeah, my mom used to have to clear me with sage because spirits would follow me home when I was a kid. And I was like, whoa, your experience with energy far surpasses what I know. But okay, I can be in a place of, I've never had that happen. I've never experienced that, but I don't naysay you.
Yeah, I can still honor your experience because
Yeah.
it's not my experience, right? I
And
can have space for that.
yeah, and be fascinated and curious and like,
Yes.
whoa.
Yeah.
Accept it without being able to understand how it works.
I feel like I've been for a good time now in a space where energy is understood and where I can talk about these things and it's normal. That when I get an interaction where I'm talking about the energetics of stuff or a ritual or how we interact energetically with each other as well, and someone naysays, like you're saying, or even makes fun of it, for me it feels disrespectful because it's not something that I feel like I need to defend, but I do feel like if I'm sharing something that is close to my heart and is part of who I am with someone else, I am opening something.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I would expect is I don't expect someone to believe that, but I do expect for them to be okay with that and respect that.
Yeah. And this is a really different territory than I think we normally spend time in. So we started out with, assumptions give us this certainty and it's like, I don't have to be vulnerable and open. And then of course, on the other side, we all have the delight of being around people who share our worldview and share our reality and know exactly, and you just say one word and everybody else knows the full phrase you mean. And it's like, we feel so seen and we feel like our reality is being confirmed. And to occupy this middle space of, oh, I don't know that, and I'm not fighting against it. I would like to be Olympic gold medalist level at that skill. I don't know. Oh, I don't know about that. I'm open to that being true.
Yeah. I guess it's about being curious about other people's worldviews and assumptions as well.
Yeah. And I think it has to be grounded. I mean, all these threads are coming together. I think curiosity has to be grounded in a feeling of safety and self-regulation or homeostasis as we were talking about it.
Yeah.
Because that's the other connection I was making about assumptions is, we really can only truly learn if we're open, and we can only open if we feel safe. So rather than trying to convince and cajole and make these arguments with one another, what if we created moments of connection about small things like how do you make mashed potatoes? It's like, I feel like this would be such a cool social, not experiment, but like a way to play is how can we create moments that just shift us out of our default that create enough curiosity and safety at the same time. Have you heard about this? What is it called? Like the no pants subway ride?
No.
Then I think it used to happen annually. And it would just be like whoever wanted to participate could participate. And it was a certain day at a certain time. People in New York City would ride the subway with no pants on. and they would be like dressed in, you know, the top half of the suit, their briefcases, whatever it was, they'd just act like there was nothing amiss. And it was so interesting to see everybody's reactions, because not just there's one guy and he's not wearing pants, in which case you're like, oh my gosh, he's out of reality. It was all these people from all different walks of life, many of whom were dressed as professionals from the waist up. And so it has this effect on people of going like, wait, maybe they're not crazy, maybe I'm crazy. Not that we want people to walk around questioning if they have a grasp on reality.
Yeah, but it's challenging.
It challenges your assumption, and you start just going like, wait, did I not get the memo? You know, is there something going on here and I didn't get the memo? And I think it, like, those kinds of playful ways of shaking us out of the default reality are very cool.
Yeah.
So what's your big insight?
Actually, you created a room in my mind for the other meaning of accommodation. Yeah, I accommodated that idea in my mind. Oh my, yeah, that was really insightful. I was thinking, it's that if I'm accommodating for something, I need to think like, do I want to create space for it?
Yeah,
This is a big insight.
that's mine as well. Because I'll back up further and further and further, and it's not only I'm creating space for that in my reality, but I'm influencing what we find socially acceptable.
Yeah.
By those
and I'm even questioning like with this, like, when I'm accommodating, is it reciprocal? Because am I being accommodated?
Yeah. Is everybody getting space on the armrest for their elbows?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any insight action that you're feeling called to? Sounds like a lot is percolating. And my other big insight is that we are working on these things, but it may not be on the surface of my mind. And that's something I know is true for me. And I think about, my growth and change happens because of subtle, small shifts that I may not even be aware I'm making, not because I get up every day and I'm like, okay, I'm changing this. And I've spent 20 minutes exercising on changing that thing. That's not how my big transformations have happened.
Some of my big transformations have been happening by just doing addiction meditation and letting it work.
Letting it work. I saw on a recent Aquarian Women's Leadership call, I really appreciated, Jen said, that's the great thing about Kundalini yoga. You just have to step into the water. You just have to get into the water. Like, if you get in the water, you'll get wet. You don't have to know what you're releasing. You don't have to know what you're calling in. Just practice. Just do the practice and it works on you. It's like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, and I love how it just, like, you don't need to think what you're releasing, and it's happening. And also I love how sometimes we can see what we're really needing, but a mentor can see just by our reactions and the way we're talking, and just say like, practice addiction meditation. And we're like, that's the one I don't want to practice. That's why I need to practice.
But I feel like that's kind of the prescription for everything.
Yes.
Addiction meditation.
Addiction right now, addiction meditation and Kauri Kriya. Addiction meditation to release these addictions to other people and how things need to be, because the patterns and so on. This is my main thing. And Kauri Kriya, so that I can hear myself and hear other people as well and be heard.
I don't know Kauri Kriya. I'll have to look that one up.
I'll send it to you.
Okay. Amazing. Yeah. So good. I feel like we're exactly where we need to be, coming off of this eclipse, coming into the equinox. And I just feel this has been such an uncomfortable year that it must be doing something good for me. Because I'm not leading this experience.
Yeah.
I'm not leading this experience. So there must be something. There's a comfort in I must be on a path. I must be truly on a new path because I don't know where the heck I'm going.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, can't wait to hear from everybody what resonated for you. What was your big insight? What insight to action are you taking from this? And what do you think about this idea of accommodations, accommodating people?
Yeah.
How does that land for you?
Let us know. What are you accommodating for? And where do you feel accommodated?
Take a
And
good.
are you accommodating for yourself?
Oh, yes. Are you accommodating yourself? Are you making accommodations for
Or are you giving your bed for others to live on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Make things work for living. Yeah. So let us know. And until next time, incite some action.